I'm here with Bethany Kimball, and I'm really excited to be able to hear her story. I've heard portions of it, but I got to meet Bethany through one of our students at Craft Education, and her family came to one of our small groups gatherings at our house, and got to hear her story of what she's doing with some girls that are younger than her, and she's been doing it for a while. And so I'll let her tell the story, but just really believe that it'll encourage each of us as we hear what God's been doing in her and through her. So, Bethany. All right, so to get started, we want to go back to the beginning and tell me a little bit about how you first came to know Jesus.
Yeah, well, so I was born in a Christian family, and we went to church, and I think my beginning story is a little bit different, because when I was 5 years old, God called me to be a missionary. So I had that in mind throughout my childhood, which is a little bit abnormal, I think, but I was thinking about that, being a missionary and in Mexico. So I was just thinking about that and wanting to prepare for that. So I do have one memory where I was I was probably really little, around 5, but I was that's when I accepted Jesus, which is, I was really, really little, but I had the Holy Spirit, so.
That's awesome. How old are you now?
I am 15.
It's a hard question. So one of the things that, as I was talking to, first your sister told me about what you're doing, and then I talked with your parents about it, but tell me what your group looks like right now, who meets with you, and what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, so I have, we're on Zoom. We started with that, we were on Zoom because of COVID, but then we moved, so actually I'm not within 3 hours of anybody in my group. They're all between, I think, ages 10 and 12. There might be a 9-year-old, I can't remember. But I have 6 or 7 girls. Let's see, there are 2 who are siblings, and then my younger sister, and then some people who I've actually never met in person before, other people in my group invited to the Bible study. So yeah, I think we have 6 or 7 girls, and we meet every Tuesday, and we're going through a book of the Bible and just studying it, and going through the verses, breaking it down, and kind of learning. For them, it's learning how to study the Bible, because most of them either don't have a Christian family, or their family is a very new believers. So they're learning what their parents are learning, essentially.
So you were telling me earlier that how the group got started, and I want you to share with the group here how did that happen?
So when I was 5, God called me to be a missionary in Mexico, which is a pretty young age, but that's what he did. And so from then on, I always had this perspective of I'm going to be doing ministry, so I need to plan for that. I need to foster the skills that I'll need for that. I need to start working on. So when I was 12, I was talking to my dad at my grandparents' house, actually, and I was talking to my dad, and I was I feel I know I need to be a missionary in Mexico, but I can't do that right now, obviously, and I'm not going to be able to do that in the near future other than just visiting. And he said, well, why don't you start a Bible study? And I was 12 years old, and I said, sounds like a good idea. So I lived in Chicago at the time, and I went around to the neighbors, and we were in a mainly African-American neighborhood, but I went around to the neighbors and I found all the people who I knew they had kids or girls who were like 2 years younger than me. And I was like, I don't think if they're under the age of 6, they're going to be able to understand anything. So I think I'll start at 7. So I had, it started with just me, my younger sister who is 10, and 2 sisters who have been there the whole time. One was 7 and one was 10 at the time. And that's how we started. It was just me teaching 3 girls, and we went through a little book for tweens, which I could have gone. I actually had just finished going through it, and then I was like, "This is a good book. I think I'll teach it now." So we went through a book together, and then before I had finished the book, I was like, you know what, I'm feeling confident. So we added some more girls. There was another girl from the neighborhood. She was a little bit more challenging, and she kind of came off and on, but she was like, she was 9, and so we finished the book, and then I still didn't feel confident to just teach straight from the Bible because I was only 12 and a half. So I found some different books that I would do where we would read a story that was connected to a Bible scripture, that kind of supplementary material. Then I think after like 6 to 8 months, our church at the time did like a small group discovery day where you would put, like, if you had a small group, which technically it was a small group, we were a little Bible study, you could put out like a little sign and talk to people to get more people to come to your group. So I put out a little sign, and it said started on the couch and flamed at the kitchen table, because that's what happened. Started on a couch in a living room, and then I taught them around their kitchen table.
I want to ask you more about the girls that started coming initially. Were they friends of yours, or did you just see them around the neighborhood, or how did that relationship start?
So believe it or not, I did just see them around the neighborhood and was like, I think they look like they're 2 years younger than me.
Wow.
So I didn't know them at all, I don't think, but they were friendly, and we had talked like maybe 2 times. So I was like,
so you said hi.
I said, hi, I'm starting a Bible study. You want to come? And they said yes. So,
very cool.
Yeah, but.
So the group went from, because a lot of those girls didn't know Jesus, so it was kind of an evangelistic group to start
very evangelistic.
with. But as you went through the Bible, started discipling them, how did that transition happen? How did they respond to, I mean, if they're not followers of Jesus yet and they're doing a Bible study, at some point did they say, yeah, I want to follow Jesus, or how did that?
Well, let's see, the 2 girls, I think that the main progress I can see through my whole group is the 2 girls, the sisters who are from my neighborhood, and they came all, they've come every single day, every of 3 years that we had it. And when we started, neither of them were, I don't know if they would be considered Christians. They probably just never thought about it before. Their dad was not a Christian, and he didn't like church. But their grandma was a believer, and they had went to her church one time. And so when we went through the book together, and it was like one of them, the younger one, was very accepting of everything. She was also emotionally unstable. They didn't have a mom, and the other girl who was from our neighborhood also didn't have a mom or a dad, and she was living with her grandmother. So they were all generally very receptive of what I was saying. They weren't like angry. There were some very weird concepts some of them thought because of not growing up in a Christian family that were very interesting to talk about. Everything from like reincarnation to where do you go when you die. Like, it's just like they just didn't know. They like it's kind of like they weren't like opposed to learning, but they didn't know anything. So,
and these are 7 and 9-year-olds, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're young, but like the only thing they would know is I know 2 of them knew that God existed, but that's pretty much the extent of what it was. I'm not, it kind of, when I'm trying to think of like when they became a Christian, because they weren't Christians when they started. They didn't know who Jesus was. They didn't know any of the stories. But I can't think of a definitive time when they said, I want to become a follower of Jesus. It kind of morphed, almost flowed. I'm a very flowy person, so just it all went along, and as I saw that they were understanding and accepting things, I'd move on to something harder and harder and harder, just so then we just kind of flowed along. But I do remember at the time there was we had added a few people to the group, like some of my younger sister's friends, and I was like, I asked them, are you guys all Christians? Because it was important for whatever we were talking about. I can't exactly remember what we were talking about, but they all said yes. So they all were Christians, and the two girls who were in my neighborhood started coming to church with us. They came to church with us every week that we could take them to church, which was like almost every week. So they would come to church with us, and we would meet on Mondays. So I can't think of a definite time when they were like, I want to become a Christian, but it was, they are Christians now.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I know you guys were part of a church, big church, that was part of the community as well. It's cool to see that you weren't just inviting them to church, but you were going to where they are at and being their friend. I'm sure you being a couple of years older was attractive to them to want to hang out. But through the journey that you've been on, what have been some of your most difficult challenges or things that you've wrestled with as you've done this? And I'm sure parents have, in their discipling you, have given you encouragement or perspective. What have been some of the most difficult challenges you faced?
Yeah, so I think interesting enough, one of the main challenges I had was after I started my group, I felt like, I'm doing good. I'm being a really good person. And I actually struggled with pride, a lot of pride through most of those years up until now, and it is one of my main struggles. But in regards to like directly with the Bible study, when I first started, I was 12 years old and I was so shy I could not ask for ketchup at a McDonald's. And I didn't know these girls, so it was painful asking them because I had only talked to them twice, which might have been why I didn't go for girls who were my age. I went for kids who were younger because I was like, I know how to deal with younger kids. I have younger siblings. But yeah, so that was I was shy, which was kind of hard. I also I didn't feel like I could teach. I was afraid to teach. I was afraid to say something wrong and teach like them that was something that wasn't right, because I didn't feel like I knew very much. I didn't feel like I was very knowledgeable, which is true because I was 12. But my dad was always encouraging me to that I could teach, and praying for me before. And then the first day I started it, I actually had a lot of spiritual warfare all the way leading up until when we started the Bible study, then it was gone. And it was so I was kind of afraid. I was nervous to talk and teach. I was also nervous that they would not that they wouldn't listen. And there was some difficulties with some girls who were from the neighborhood that were kind of a little bit rough, to say it nicely, but who kind of tried to fight for attention and disrupted the group times, which became difficult. I actually did have to tell one girl that she couldn't come and that was really hard for me because I was at that time very, very non-confrontational. I didn't want to confront someone. I didn't want to say no. I felt bad. And it was like really hard for me because I was like, oh, I have to draw the line somewhere. And so that was, so I would say it was my struggles because of the group was pride. And then my struggles with like having the group was like fear and feeling like I was inadequate to do what God was calling me to do.
It's so good. Earlier we were talking with your sister, who happens to be doing the video on this, and is also how we originally connected. But we were talking about how she had started a group a little bit after you had started, and it was a little different group, and I wanted to just kind of bring it up because I know you're mentioning one of your greatest struggles was pride, and you're saying that that's changed, or at least you become aware of it. What were some of the things that helped you to realize or to kind of bring that out to your awareness?
Yeah, so when Abby started her Bible study, it was about a year after mine. It was another source of pride because I was like, haha, like she's older than me, and like I started my group first. But then she needed help because she had a very rough group, which despite the fact that the girls were 12 and 13, they were a handful. She called me in to ask me to help her, and so I would help her every week, and it was very difficult, and it was very confrontational, and it was crazy and chaotic, to say the least. But it helped me to realize, like, I'm not all that great, and my sister is doing something that is very hard, and it is totally not right for me to like think like, oh, like I'm better than her because I started earlier. It's like, no, Bethan, you're actually like not that great, and like you're not like, I was feeling like I'm like perfect, kind of almost.
Got it figured out. I know.
Yeah, I got this figured out, and then I went to that and I was like, I don't got this figured out. Like, no, not okay. And so that was one of the ways that like, one of the ways that pride started to like, I started to realize I was prideful, or I think that was more of a way where I became less prideful, but I still didn't realize how prideful I was. And I think that realization really came through like worship meetings where we would really be like, we used to go to this place called Chai Hop, and it would just be like worship and praise, like all night, not all night, but like late into the night. And I think it was probably at one of those where someone was praying over me, and that was like realized the like pride that I was having. And then I went on to try to get rid of my pride in all the wrong ways for another year. So that was great. And it actually wasn't until the beginning of this year that God kind of told me, like, you could ask me to help you. And I was like, that'd be such a great idea, because I was trying to do it myself. It's not working to do it myself. And I was feeling very hopeless. And then God was like, you could ask me. And I was like, so yeah, then that's, I mean, it's still a struggle in my life,
sure.
But it has, God has really helped me to work through it.
Yeah, no, and it's so good because many times when we look at other people and what they're doing, the temptation is to compare. And the scripture says it's not wise to compare. But even as we're talking about this, and as I'm interviewing you, as much as it encourages, some people might be tempted to compare and be like, well, I feel like I've got more struggles, or this is harder, or it didn't happen the way that her story went. And yet the reality is, as we're obedient to what God calls us to do, that it's His glory, that if it works out, praise be to God, because He's the one that's doing. But if it doesn't, it doesn't mean it's a failure or that we're a failure. It just means that, we're obedient. That's the key. And so I appreciate you sharing that and being honest with that. So as we were talking, I know you've not taken the life language test, but we could figure out pretty well that Shaper is one of your top. You like having a plan. You like knowing what the plan is. And so one of the things, and the reason I bring that up is because as we look at different people that are stepping out and feeling called to start a small group that is either evangelistic or discipling, there's a temptation to say, that's not me, I'm not that kind of a person, when really God can use all different types of personalities or giftings. But as we were talking about the plan for your future and where you see this group going. We were talking about leadership and just wanted to bring that up. Where do you see the group going, and what is the plan for your group?
Yeah, so when I started, the plan was to talk about God, and then now I can kind of look forward a little bit more into the future as I've really seen them grow and seen their personalities and their strengths. And ultimately my goal is that I'm raising up leaders. I'm not just raising up people to be good Christians, because good Christians are going to go and talk to other people to raise up other Christians. That's what we're called to do. So my goal is to raise up leaders. And I know I haven't raised up any leaders, probably because they were very young when I started and didn't have the kind of strong foundation of faith that I had. So I can see in them the beginnings of what can be leadership and the skills and the giftings. I can see those already coming into them, and I can see them showing them, but I haven't and I know some of them where I'm kind of almost ready to start challenging them. And I have challenged them in smaller ways to invite someone else to group, to talk to someone about Jesus. And I've worked on them, growing them in that, helping them grow in that way. But it's not like somebody who is in my Bible study is now leading another Bible study.
Yeah, but that's the vision you have.
That's my vision.
So your family was living in Chicago, and this is where your group started. I know at one point you had a half Mexican or Latina group, and the other half was black, and you were the only white girl, which was funny because your sister said she didn't realize she was white until she was 13, something like that. So that was your culture. Now your family transitioned to farmland of Michigan out near Chelsea, and I want to just hear, what is your heart? I mean, your background was inner city, and now you're in farmland. What's your vision and heart for this community? Where do you see things going with your group?
I don't know how long I'm going to have my Bible study go. I do not see a definite end. I could see maybe one of the girls in my group starting to lead it or something like that, but as far as I know, I'm going to keep going until God tells me to stop. And so I haven't gotten the red light, I have gotten the green light, and so I'm just going to keep on teaching them until God tells me. I'm, as I've said before, a very flowy person. So,
well, and I know in this area, as you connect with people, that what God's done in your heart, that I'm excited to see what God does in Chelsea, because I do see, as much as it's different context, that God's been doing something in you, and that He, and through your family, to see what He does in Chelsea is exciting to me. So
yeah.
So if you were to give advice to someone that was interested in starting something similar, what advice would you give them?
If God is telling you to do it, then you need to do it, whether or not you feel capable. And if you can talk to your friends about something you enjoy, you can teach. And if you can can read the Bible, and you understand what you're reading at some points, then you can teach it. And if you feel uncomfortable teaching, do it anyway. And just over everything, pray and let other people pray for you, and don't think that you're like better than everyone else because you're leading a Bible study. And let God lead you into the greater things He's going to have you do.
Well, I appreciate you making time to share your story with us. We really wanted to capture that and share that with others. And I know that for some people, you may wonder, well, I want to know more details. As part of our band app, we really feel free to ask questions. I know Beth Ann was talking about, I'd be gladly speak with anybody interested in doing something similar, and we'll see what God does. I believe God is doing something with not just one or two, but He's doing something in the nations that He wants to use individuals willing to step out in the sphere of influence that they have and really not only share Jesus, but to make disciples. And so, thank you.